I will start with facts which I believe are germane to the question as it's formulated, and just cite some statistics. I know that statistics can always be made to prove anything, but in this case, I give you my word that they are objectively selected and are not misleading. In the first 16 years of this new century, the GDP per capita of the United States has grown by 1%. And if it had grown in this period at the rate that it did in the last 20 years of the 20th century, the people, the families and individuals of the United States would be on average 20% wealthier than they are. In this period, 15 million people have fallen out of the workforce. The percentage of Americans above the age of 20 who work has declined by nearly 5 full percent. And the number of hours worked, any kind of legitimate work in the United States in that period, has declined by the shocking total of 12%. These are very dangerous figures and a very dangerous trend. And the impact of this is very burdensome to the country, and it's very worrisome to the country. And you must remember that the ethos of the United States is one of such optimism and such ambition that it is not a country accustomed to the concept of decline at any time, and it has never had a period of absolute or comparative decline such as it has had in the last 15 to 20 years. And it very much concerns the whole country. But coming up to the election, it must be said, this was not mentioned by the established elements of either party. It was very little mentioned in the media. And it was really only seized upon by outlier candidates, to some degree Senator Sanders, who is a democratic quasi-Marxist, and on the other side, on the Republican right, Senator Cruz. Now, if you people are startled by Donald Trump, you will really be shocked if you get a good look at Senator Cruz. He's pitched his whole campaign to the corn cobbers and the wool hats and the people with automatic weapons in the rear windows of their pickup trucks. And he, as far as I can see, would hand over the Pentagon to the National Rifle Association. And he declared in Indianapolis last spring that God told him to run for president. And in this last election year, in policy terms, Trump was a moderate. He is in favor of universal health care. It's obviously going to be with some difficulty that he gets there, but he's in favor of it, at least as a concept. And he is in favor of lower taxes for lower income people and higher taxes for higher wealth people. And in policy terms, he's a very reasonable person. The fact that Mrs. Clinton referred to half of Trump's supporters as deplorable was extremely unwise, given that she was, after all, running for the highest office in the country. And these people are worried. And what occurred was an assault by Trump upon the entire political establishment. He ran against all factions of both parties. He ran against practically all the media, almost all of audible and visible academia. He ran against the lobbyists, the polling organizations, the bureaucracy, Wall Street, and quite explicitly that infestation of useful, to his enemies, idiots in Hollywood. He ran against all of them, and he won. And he has won with a program that is quite radical. He has a tax plan, which I understand he intends to reveal at the end of this week, which will include taxes sharply reduced for all corporations, sharply reduced for lower income groups, tax incentives to start a decades-late renovation of national infrastructure, incentivizing $2 trillion of retained profit overseas to return to the U.S., and he has already dismantled the nonsense of global warming, and he has already shown that he will give the country, as has been mentioned, a foreign policy that is neither the trigger-happy belligerency of George W. or the Panglossian fantasy of Obama telling America's enemies and allies to change roles and places. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Conrad Black. Now, the first voice against the motion, Khizr Khan is a Muslim American lawyer whose son was killed in action in Iraq. At the 2016 US Democratic Party convention, he denounced Trump's call for a ban on migrants from some Muslim countries and questioned his understanding of the US Constitution. Khizr Khan, please make your way to the lectern.
Good evening. America is discovering the true nature of this president. And the motion is, Trump is making America great again. And I stand before you against the motion. Here are the facts. You remember the very loudly pronounced bigoted statement by candidate Trump was, "I will build the wall and Mexico will pay for the wall." Well, friends, we all know Mexico is not paying for the wall, and the wall is not being built. The reason is that to build the wall, you need funding, and Congress has loudly announced that they will not allocate any funding for the building of the wall. So we are waiting. Remember, the second promise and loudest promise was, we will repeal and replace Affordable Care Act in the United States. He promised that during the election campaign, and then he tried, and you saw 3 weeks ago how it was defeated when it went to the Congress. His party is the majority party in the Congress, yet that proposal was defeated. Third, jobs. I will create thousands of jobs in the United States. And where are the jobs? We don't see them. Even in the near future, we don't see them. So that is the job promise. I'm a Muslim American. I'm a patriotic Muslim American. I consider myself responsible for the safety and security of the United States. We heard Muslim ban number 1 and Muslim ban number 2. You all know where the ban is. Rule of law has prevailed. The fifth and much talked about accomplishment is the appointment of Judge Gorsuch to Supreme Court. He's going to make America great again. No, he's not. Senate rule were changed. Instead of 60 votes, were changed to simple majority. That is the only accomplishment that you know that he had been able to do. Remember, within 100 days, his national security advisor, agent of foreign governments, was disgracefully walked out of White House, was asked to resign. Keep these issues that I mentioned to you. Is this the way to govern one of the most enviable democracy in the world? I oppose this motion. You heard my brief statements, and my story that continues, my journey that continues, is in opposition of Donald Trump, in support of democracy, democratic values, safety and security of my country, safety and security of Europe, safety and security of mankind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khizr Khan. Now, our second speaker for the motion is Aaron Banks. He's a former major donor to UKIP, the UK Independence Party, and co-founder of Leave.eu. He recently quit UKIP to set up a new populist political force called the Patriotic Alliance, whose aim is to bring Trump-style politics to the UK. He's also launched the anti-establishment news website Westmonster, which is modelled on the American websites Breitbart and The Drudge Report. Aaron, please make your way to the lectern. Thank you.
Good evening. I just want to tackle the last point that the last speaker made. As a businessman, to achieve anything in 100 days is pretty much impossible, let alone make America great. So I think Donald Trump has set out to actually do the things he said he was going to be elected to do. The fact that the establishment, both in the Republican Party and elsewhere, have tried to stop him is not an indictment of his presidency after 100 days. But what I wanted to do was reel back the clock a little bit and look about the reason Donald Trump was elected in the first place. Globalization has caused massive dislocations within the world. We've seen huge amounts of money transfer from the poor to the rich. And in fact, just today, I left Mayfair in the morning. We went down to Clacton and visited what is the poorest part of England, in a place called Jaywick. It's overlooked. It's a shambolic place. And the contrast between Mayfair and that area that was, utterly just hollowed out, to be frank. And it takes us where we joined the Trump story in Mississippi, where we were asked to go down, or Nigel was asked to go down and speak in Jackson, Mississippi. And 20,000 people came out to listen to Donald Trump and to listen to Farage, and there were another 20,000 queued down the road. And the reason was that, in essence, they were disappointed with the political class and the fact, I think Conrad mentioned all the economic stats, but the only one you need to know is a salary of a normal American have flatlined for over 8 years. The communities were hollowed out. And so Donald Trump was a response, a kind of almost anti-political response. Now, I would agree with some of the comments of the previous speaker. He's a deeply flawed candidate, a deeply flawed president. But what he represents is a catalyst. And I don't think that Donald Trump will make America great again. I think the people of America will. And when we look at the major policies, which is to bring back jobs into America, to look at how you could change the tax system to actually bring companies back in, there's something like $2 trillion parked offshore out of America because the tax system of America means that corporation tax there is 38%, the highest in the Western world. And I think he's got a whole range of policies that will be very beneficial. But I think we have to see it in the context. The same as Brexit. Why did Brexit happen? People in London didn't see it coming because they didn't go out and look. If you actually look at what's happened to communities in our country, they've been hollowed out. And actually it was a reaction from the poorest in our society that thought that the politicians and the sort of corporations, it just wasn't in their benefit. And I think that's very much where Donald Trump has come in. I think, I watched the French election and Macron's going to win. I can tell you, if the entire British establishment line up and say, pick that guy and not Marie Le Pen, in the same way that everybody lined up against Trump, there's going to be big trouble. And don't rule it out. So I think from my perspective, it's not a question of whether Donald Trump will make America great again. It's whether he will free up Americans to once again make America great again. And that's my key point I had to make.